So welcome everyone to the closing General Assembly of the International Service Learning Forum. I'm so honored and excited to be here today to introduce our panel. My name is Amy Meuers, and I'm the CEO of the National Youth Leadership Council, NYLC. It's been our absolute honor to host this day of learning, inspiration, connection for each of you. As we bring this forum to a close, we wanted to provide you with an opportunity to hear from leaders on the power of service learning experiences globally and how we can continue to support service learning in your community or wherever you are. So I am going to stop sharing that screen so that you can see our amazing panelists. So joining me here today is Secretary General Shun, Noriana, and Avia. It's such an honor to have each of you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves because they will do it much better than I will. So I think we'll start with you. Could you please share a little bit about yourself with our guests or with our participants here today?
Okay, thank you, Amy. Hello, everyone. My name is Ogawa. I'm Secretary General of Japan Fundraising Association. So before I do the self-introduction, let me introduce our organization. I myself and Shunsuke, who will speak right after me, is in Japan Fundraising Association, which was established 2009. So we have 13 years history. And our organization's mission is to innovate the society with fundraising, and there are several initiatives. And one of them is to raise and foster fundraiser in Japan. And the second one is creating a society that promotes donations and also social impact investment. And a part of that is to provide the service learning to schools such as junior high, high school, and college. And I joined this organization 3 years ago. And before, I worked in one of the multinational IT companies. And there I did the corporate citizenship and CSR work. And there I also provided the service learning as the company side, and such as career education and IT education. And I found that there's a strong need for that in Japan education, which will be covered soon. And when I thought my next career, I decided to work in a social sector, not in a business side. So that's why I'm here. Thank you. Looking forward to this session.
Thank you so much. Like I say, much better introduction than I could do. It's so wonderful for you to be here. Thank you. Shun, how about you? Would you mind introducing yourself to our guests today?
Thank you, Amy. And first of all, I'm very honored to be invited to this session. And hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Shunsuke Ohishi. I am the managing director of Japan Fundraising Association. Please call me Shun. The Japan Fundraising Association is a non-profit organization. At the Japan Fundraising Association, I'm in charge of promoting social contribution and donation education programs for elementary through college students. More recently, we have been developing a donation version of the SDGs card game. These are one of the service learning programs. In this session, I would like to inform you about the status of these programs in Japan. I'm looking forward to exchange views with you in this session. It is now 6:30 in the morning on November 11 in Japan. I have very good start to the day. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you both for getting up early. Hopefully you have a nice cup of tea or coffee, whatever your beverage of choice is, to keep you going this early in the morning.
Thank you.
Noriana, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our attendees here today.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you, Amy, so much for inviting me to be on this panel. My name is Noriana Jakopin, and I work as the Research Programs Administrator for the Hydrocephalus Association, which is a medical nonprofit for a lesser known neurological disease. I don't expect any of you to have heard of hydrocephalus before. I started there as a volunteer 8 years ago as a sophomore in high school because I needed to fulfill my school's student service learning graduation requirement. So as a quick aside, because a critical part of my service work involves spreading awareness and education, I'm just going to give a quick explanation. Hydrocephalus is a buildup of fluid on the brain that can cause a host of neurological deficits. There's no cure, and while treatment can manage it, that comes with its own portfolio of issues. So my job there is to help manage our research programs in a multitude of ways, including developing resources for scientists, managing and analyzing data in our patient registry, and communicating the latest research to our patient community. I'm also a super senior studying neuroscience and bioengineering at the University of Maryland, and I aspire to get an MD, PhD in neuroscience and have a career in research. And so I'm here because my whole journey towards this was started off with service learning. So.
Thanks, Noriana. I love the term super senior. I want to be a super senior. We'll have to talk after.
Means you haven't finished in 4 years, but that just makes us sound better.
Continuous learning, that's what that is. Avia, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Of course, Amy, thank you so much for inviting me to this panel as well. Now is 4:38 a.m. in Jakarta, Indonesia, but I am so happy to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Avia Destimianti. I am the co-founder and director of Beneran Indonesia. Beneran Indonesia is a nonprofit organization that empowers youth to create an impact through civic and character education. Our educational programs implement experiential learning methods, such as service learning and also game-based learning. So my first encounter with service learning was when I was a graduate student at Boston University. Currently, I am a doctoral student at State University of Jakarta, and the focus of my study is e-service learning to increase critical thinking ability in youth. So very honored to be here.
Thank you so much. And we need a special thank you for you, because I couldn't be as eloquent as you, well, no matter what time of the day, but especially at 4:30 in the morning. It is such an honor to have each of you here today. And again, thank you so much for joining us. It's just such a pleasure to have you here and to see your smiling faces. I would love to start out with you, and just really dig into, could you share with our participants here today how Japan has embraced service learning as a strategy to support their students? I think it's such a remarkable story. And so I would love for you to share what that looks like in Japan.
Okay, thank you, Amy. And first of all, I'd like to share some background. In 2013, one of the international research results indicated that Japan was the lowest among 7 countries under the question of I may be changed a society. So the percentage of the students who answered yes for that was the lowest. And that was a kind of shocking data for Japan and even for the social sector in Japan. And recently, the various types of service learning have begun, such as ESG, education for the sustainable development, and financial education and career education. And media has been covered for those activities, and also the schools and teachers are paying attention. And because those learning class will be a good opportunity for students to think of how they can contribute to the society and contribute to change the society. And as you know, the last year, 2021, there was Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics Games, and that was also the good opportunity for young people to learn, to know about the diversity, like a diversity of age, gender, culture, and even if there is a disability or not, as such as so on. and also the opportunity to think of the, the eco-friendly society. And as the Ministry of Education is now also promoting the financial education and the donation, and the demand for the donation education or giving education, which our organization is giving, is also the demand for that is increasing. The giving education is the class where students learn what donations are and how it will be used, and learn about nonprofit that fundraise donations to solve social issues and support the society, social vulnerable people, and also think about which a nonprofit they would like to support. And this is service learning, and it can be also positioned as the financial education from the perspective of handling money in the form of the donation. So therefore, the financial companies such as banks and security companies are also paying attention to trend of those giving education. And as you know, the service learning from the PBL, project-based learning, and also the PBL is gained attention as the alternative to the usual classroom type of teaching style, to think and listen and discuss, collaborate with others to create the new things. That is also happening in Japan too. But however, the teachers often do not have the good subject to deal with the PBL, so that they rely on outside resource such as nonprofit and companies to provide good contents in it. And the subject covered in the service learning are not subject-based, specific-based, but cross-curricular, and students think based on the learning by each subject and try to articulate that to solve the complex issue on the service learning class, as you know. So that is the good exercise for students, and the good exercise. That exercise will help them once they go out to the real world. And in this class, students will also discover the good point about their friends and the other students. They usually don't realize in the regular classes, and learning to learn the joy and to think and work together with other friends. And those are things happening in Japan to increase the young people to attitude, and also to increase the motivation to change the society. That's all from me.
That's amazing. I love that connection to financial literacy and the cross-curricular, and then just that student engagement all the way around, and thinking about how to make the world a better place. And hopefully we'll dig deeper into the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs that you've mentioned as well. But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I want to go next to Shun and talk about the benefits that you've seen to students and to the teachers who are using service learning. Kind of what are the impacts even on families and community in Japan?
Okay, yes. In Japan, it was rare for adults other than teachers to be involved in school educational programs, especially in elementary through high school. The only adult with whom children had contact were almost exclusively teachers. In recent years, the curriculum guidelines have changed in Japan, and people belonging to companies and NPOs are also getting involved in school administration and certain subjects. For example, they are working with teachers to create and facilitate classes on various issues in society, and providing internship experience to think about careers. Although the program has just begun and it is still a process of trial and error, I feel that it that it is definitely having provide a positive impact on both teachers and students. First of all, the good points of teachers are as follows. The first good things for teachers is that they are able to offer their students things that teachers cannot teach. Teachers can teach subject matter, but in many cases, they are not very good at teaching lessons that are about events in the community and connecting students to the community. By having people from companies and nonprofit organizations provide real-world events and information, and having teachers pass this information on to their students, teachers will be able to provide lessons that are relevant to the real world. On the other hand, the following are good points for students. In Japan, children spend much of their time at school and at home, but their connection to the local community is often rare. For children, taking an interest in the local community through school and being able to connect with people they know will increase their sense of belonging to community. Another major benefit that by dealing with real-world issues for which there are no right answers, children can develop the ability to solve problems, think deeply, and do so. For families, it is a good opportunity to become aware of the local community and the social issues through learning about the results of their children's learning. For the local community, the increase in the number of people from children to adults who are interested in the local community and have a strong sense of belonging will be a great benefit. These are my answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, so many gems in there. But thinking about, I mean, that sense of belonging to community and the service learning is real world learning, right? Like you can't have service learning without real world learning. I also love that you touched on this youth voice, that student facilitation and having young people really leading in the process. So thank you, Shun, for sharing that. Noriana, I want to come to you as our young person on the panel and have you talk more about your service learning experience that led you to wanting to address hydrocephalus.
Yeah, so I'll start off with going through like my history with service learning. Starting in 6th grade, my class, we were continually told that we had this student service learning, and they dubbed it SSL graduation requirement. And it was thrown at us, I'll say, and every year of middle school, we earned 10 hours from random class-based activities we did. I actually didn't realize that happened until like I got to high school, and I was like, how do I have 30 SSL hours already? But by the time I got to high school, they had kind of disconnected the purpose of service learning from, you know, what they were presenting to us. So I had this acronym SSL in my head, and it was something I had to get done to graduate. So as an item on my checklist to get done, I started looking for ways to complete my hours. And I've always loved science, and I've always loved neuroscience and medicine. So when the local hospital told me that they had too many volunteers, because I wasn't the only one who, you know, was told that if you want to go into medicine, working at a hospital is a good idea, or volunteering at a hospital is a good idea. I saw the Hydrocephalus Association on my county's list of service learning approved service learning opportunities. And basically I had no idea what it was, but I saw that the suffix had, the cephalus in it. I was like, that has something to do with the head and the brain, so why not? And that turned out to be one of the best and most, serendipitous opportunities, in my life. And I didn't really internalize that until, recently. But so over the last 8 years, my experience there, I've grown, as a person and as a professional. I've worked really closely with an incredible mentor who from the get-go put her faith in me and just kept trusting me with more and more responsibility, which is how I landed to be a staff member today. And so with that, like it helped build my confidence and sense of ownership over my work, which is really important to, feel like you're actually doing work that's impactful. And so our company is approximately 16 people, but we do work that's akin to a nonprofit staffed by like 50 to 70. So in that environment, every day you see, your coworkers, they're exhibiting this passion and this care for the cause, which is to better the lives of people who suffer from hydrocephalus. And in that kind of environment, which is very different from other settings where you might get research experience, there's no, concept of elitism. So there's no task that's like too good for anybody or like, that's too low for anybody to do. If I'm busy, doing some data entry task, my mentor is also going to, go into our constituent database and input phone numbers because it needs to get done. And, everybody's purpose is towards the mission and not towards accolades or anything like that. And that kind of passion for a cause is really contagious. So unlike a research lab experience, I got a chance to see the research community in action. So I get to connect with those who are doing the work, but also those who are impacted by the work. And in times I've spent in research labs, I've seen how quickly the main purpose, the people you're doing this for, the impact can get lost in when you're just like focused on like the nitty gritty of the work and like, oh, these are the cool research methods and cool discoveries. And sometimes you can disconnect that really easily from why you're actually doing it. And while I have such a passion for that nitty gritty of research work, I love it. I'm a nerd. I get really excited over, when my, computational simulation that the people don't actually care about the specifics of, I get excited when they work. But I think that my service learning experience helped solidify that service aspect of research, which I think I hope will make me a better scientist. And first and foremost, I want to put the people who I'm trying to help at the forefront. And so along with giving me that perspective to take into my career, it also kickstarted my career. So I've had direct access to people who are doing what I aspire to do. 8 years now after starting my journey from volunteer to intern to staff, I'm helping the organization with their strategic planning goals, and I'm collaborating with research scientists. And really exciting to me, who has a family of academics, is I'm publishing 3 papers in peer-reviewed scientific journals. And I'm just so thankful that I had service learning incorporated into my education, even if I couldn't appreciate it when it was being presented to me, because I was, I had STEM on the brain and I was like, science, math, what do you mean I have to leave the classroom? It was an invaluable opportunity. And honestly, it was mutually beneficial. So my organization got a pathway to teach young people about this topic that, even as someone who loves neuroscience, I don't think I would know about if I hadn't joined them. So yeah, that's how I am part of that organization and how it's impacted me a bit.
It's absolutely amazing. I've heard you tell this story before, and it's just every single time I think about what would have happened if you hadn't had this real world learning opportunity, this service learning experience. and the career path, like your career pathway could have taken you in such a different direction. And you can just hear the passion and excitement you have for this work and the benefit and impact that you're going to make because of this is just unbelievable and amazing. So thank you for sharing so much, Noriana. So I'm going to go to Avia, and let's dig into service learning in Indonesia. So could you share with us, Avia, like kind of the structures that are in place to support educators in using service learning as an instructional strategy? What does service learning look like in Indonesia?
Okay, thank you for the question, Amy. Indonesia is the fourth most populated country in the world, and we have a very large young population because we have this demographic bonus. So I think it's very important that we apply service learning into the instructional strategies in Indonesia. However, service learning is not a common practice yet in Indonesia. Most institutions that apply service learning are the private universities or private schools. However, the Ministry of Education is starting to change that. They have the program called Merdeka Belajar. Maybe in English, it's loosely translated into liberty in learning. So in grade school, they started to introduce project-based learning more. But for the universities, they started to introduce the real-world learning, as you said, Amy. They don't call it service learning, but they call it with other terms. They introduce internship, exchange programs, humanitarian programs, teaching opportunities, or opportunities to learn outside of their field of studies. So that's basically is the structure implemented by the Ministry of Education for Indonesia. I also want to share the experience of my organization, Beneran Indonesia, in implementing service learning. Previously, we implement service learning off-site with museums or other institutions that we partner. But in March 2020, as we all know, the pandemic hits and everything was closed. We were forced to stay at home, of course, not only Indonesians, but also all of you. So we have to be creative in how we can still apply this service learning. So we used e-service learning. It's not new. It has been implemented before. Waltner defined e-service learning as a service learning that is the part of the instruction component or the service component done online, offline, or both. So during the pandemic, we applied the extreme e-service learning where the instruction and the service component are done online. It was a learning process, and now that the public spaces are now open, we can start going back to the museums and other community partners where we usually do service learning. But still, now the COVID rises again. We still need to be very flexible on how we do this service learning. So I think for the future, e-service learning will be the future of service learning, whether it's done blended or full online. I think it's the way to go forward. That's a little bit of my experience and how service learning is implemented. I really hope in the future it can be more widely implemented, because currently if I talked about service learning to educators in Indonesia, most of them don't know what it is. Most of them are more familiar with project-based learning, case-based learning, problem-based learning. And also because there's this component where schools have to reach partnership with other community, and that is deemed as an extra work for educators. So that's a little bit of view of how the implementation of service learning in Indonesia.
Thank you, Avia. And Julie Bascom-Rogers, who's our Director of Learning and Leadership, wrote in the chat, service learning is project-based learning on steroids, which is very, very true. So just taking that extra step. Yeah, you're almost there with project-based learning. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to come back to you, and ask for, do you have some examples of kind of what students are doing in your country through service learning, kind of what positive contributions they're making?
Yes, thank you for the question. And I think the contribution to the country is all about people development for the future. And I'll give you some example. And one of the service learning program that our organization is currently offering is the program called Learning by Giving. The program itself is funded by the donation, and the students choose the recipient of the donation themselves. And through the programs, students learn about what donations are and what kind of the social issues there are in their community and society, and learn about the nonprofit that are solving those issues, and they are aware there are the people who need of support in their community. And as I mentioned earlier, in the process of the project, the students learn not only about the social issues and nonprofit, but also learn how to formulate and also present their own opinion. And during the program, I'll listen to opinion of other students, and sometimes then their mind or the idea by hearing others' opinions and also the comments. And in this way, I think the students can learn the thinking process and team-based decision making that will be needed and when they go out in the real world. And the several students who graduate from high school and who took this program then become the university student, and they are now involved to deliver this program as one of the intern of our organization. I think this is a new learning experience for them because they pass on their own learning experience to their juniors. And recently, we implemented the same program for Japan and the Myanmar students at the same time, and the international exchange are realized along with the learning, and which was a very interesting one. And also, I heard the school teachers and also are also start thinking about the fundraising for the classes they want to teach, such as service learning. And think this is the good new movement too. And also, although it may be a small movement, but a leader to become or to want to become a leader in solving society issue in their society and our country is starting to take off in Japan. An opportunity to learn about diversity, inclusion, equality, as well as other things important for living in a society in the future are certainly need, and most of them are conducted outside classroom. And those needs are steadily increasing in Japan too. So I feel this is the way to develop the people that will support Japan in the future. And I'll give you another example. And there is a school, and at that school, there is a teacher who is very, very passionate about service learning. And the students who took that teacher's service learning class, they were invited to an annual fundraising conference, which our organization held. And at the conference, the students always sat in the very front row in the sessions room, and always they raised their hands without any hesitation and were the first to ask questions. And some of them even drew the discussion in the session with a graphic recording manner. And this was great inspiration and also the stimulation to the adults who attended the conference, and the new dialogue and conversation and the new initiative were happening between students and adults. And some students graduate from that school was one of the leader member of the Giving December initiative, which is the kind of the same similar movement of the Giving Tuesday in Japan, and form new organization with adults to think of social issues and how to deal those issues. So I believe the service learning helps not only the students, but also the adults involved in the service learning to grow. And that is the way to develop people to support nation in the future. And this is a contribution to the country at the end.
Thank you so much. I love that you touched on that connection between service learning and diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and how important that is within the service learning experience and the outcome, because it is something that these are skills that we all need to develop, and our young people need to develop and think about how they're going to engage in an ever in an increasingly smaller world where we're all interconnected. So thank you for sharing those examples with us.
Thank you.
Avia, I'm going to come back to you, and I want to just touch on what you've witnessed with your students in their engagement, and especially with the pandemic around kind of mental health and general mindset. Would you mind sharing a little bit more on around those issues?
Well, let me go back a little bit further. The reason why I started my organization is because of the high rate of recruitment of youth through extremism movement. In Indonesia, the schools are growing increasingly segregated. So usually youth that are from different backgrounds don't know their peers from different backgrounds. So I think most of the time they met people of different background when they are already late in their adult or when they enter the workforce, and by then the skills that they need to really collaborate or interact with diverse people are limited. So through service learning, we strive to promote three things: sense of identity, sense of belonging, and sense of purpose. From the conversations that I have with the students, with the participants, those three things they have told me happened to them. First, one of the interns that are interning now in my organization, she's in university right now, but she started to join our program when she graduated from junior high school. So she told me from the program, she had a new sense of purpose, and that helped her also to choose what major that she will take in college. And then the students have also said that they form a new friendship from other students from different schools, from different backgrounds, and it helped them understand. Some said, oh, this is the first time I have a friend from this religion. This is the first time I have a friend from this ethnicity, or this is the first time that I experience as a minority, because in my group, most members are not like me. And while in my school or in my usual community, I'm always the majority. And then the third, they also built a sense of identity. You know, even regardless with the differences, they have this one identity as a nation, as Indonesians. So I think these three sense of identity, belonging, and purpose also have boost them, or also act as a barrier against the increase of recruitment with the extremism movement that is happening among youth. So maybe not as in a mental health impact that you're asking for, but I think geared towards all those three things that I mentioned before. I hope that answers your questions, Amy.
Absolutely. And it connects directly to, I mean, that sense of belonging ensures that, it helps to support, that engagement, that sense of purpose, that connection to each other and to something bigger. So yes, that absolutely answered the question. Thank you. And it reinforces what I was saying about, the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion within the service learning experience. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to come back to Noriana, and let's get to the why. Why is it important for young people to have these experiences, to tackle community issues? And also, my favorite question I love to ask is, what do you want people to remember from this conversation today?
That's a great question. And when one of the biggest things that I've taken away and that I want all young people to have is this idea that no one's life happens in a vacuum, in ways that can, sometimes seem intangible and not understandable. Every person's experience has an impact on others, whether or not you recognize it. And I think it's important to recognize it. I think if we live in a world where we share our struggles and our successes, it'll just be easier to get through. But in this world that we have, that's full of struggles and very harsh realities, I know it's really easy to slip into like this darkness and feel that everything is doing anything and everything is just futile. And when you're in that, I know from experience, like you can get stuck there and it's hard to crawl out of it. But experiences like service learning give you a chance to put in that activation energy to fight against that impending doom, and fight for your communities and for communities you might not even realize you play a role in, as was my case starting at the Hydrocephalus Association. And when you put in that work, the world starts to feel manageable and then starts to feel possible and then even hopeful. And, just as individuals can't be isolated, neither can communities. And so that net impact is always positive for, both the community and for you. I've always wished that, change could happen by just flipping a switch, but it can't, and that gets really exhausting. But when you work with any community, what I've found is you see that the impact of just your effort, just you being there, has such an impact on their disposition, even when that, solution to the issue seems so far off and no one really has a great way to tackle it yet, and it seems impossible. Just the fact that you're showing up and you're there, it makes a world of difference. It makes it less daunting. And the personal, for me, and like maybe slightly selfish note of doing, service experiences. For me, I find it easier to note progress that's external from me. So I find it easier to note progress in people and situations around me and that I'm a part of than noting progress in myself as an individual, such as, with mental health struggles. And when you help the community, though, you can clearly see that progress, that positive progress, you see it's possible, and that how small steps can make a big difference. You can kind of turn that around on yourself and be like, well, take a dose of your own medicine. If you're gonna notice that in other people, notice it in yourself. And yeah, so what I've learned is the importance and the beauty of, this reality that everything is intertwined. And that's what I want people to remember, especially next time, you come across something that's brand new to you that you don't know. What I found is just because you don't know much about it doesn't mean you can't have an impact. And it also doesn't mean that inaction won't have an unforeseen impact. I've witnessed how, inaction that's not on purpose, just because, just life, people don't know, people aren't aware, things, so you don't know what to get done, you can't get it done. But, however, without any blame attached, that inaction still can hurt the community. And so that's, I personally, I will always take a chance to talk about my work, because just each of you guys now having a small definition for what hydrocephalus means, that's positive progress for our community. And to me, that just shows how service can, enrich all aspects of your life. It permeates my work. It permeates when I'm just talking to people. And so the short and simple answer for why it's important for me to tackle community issues is because, why not? It would take me forever to find a reason for why I shouldn't tackle these issues, because really it's positives all around. It's one of those things where, you're going to have to work hard to find the negative on the scale.
Awesome. I love that. At the end of the day, it's why not? Right? Everyone should be doing this.
Exactly.
Which really leads me to my last question, which is for Shun. What would you say to people out there, to officials, to educators? What would you say to them to convince them that service learning is needed in our schools, in our classrooms around the world? Just, not an easy question, I know.
Thank you, Amy. That question very, very important, I think. And I try to my best. And okay, and the educational benefit and value that can be created through service learning immeasurable, and it creates positive effects for teachers, for students, for families, and for the community. That is already everyone knows, and I think this can be evidenced by the service learning initiatives that are beginning to take place around the world. So it is probably fundamentally common to all, how can I say, human beings, that people help each other, even if they have different cultures and different beliefs. The teaching and experiencing children to belong to and contribute to community should not be something that only teachers do in schools. Adults who belongs to business and non-profit organization can also teach in cooperation with teachers. By working together, the value of the experience gained by students is enhanced. Different countries and regions of the world have different educational systems. Therefore, it would be, how can I say, difficult to provide service learning in the same way in the country and region. And that is why I believe that by gathering practitioners like this and sharing information and connect of initiative each countries and region, we can learn from each other and create better service learning programs. Let's continue to practice service learning in various parts of the world, and let's share and expand it. I believe it. It is a great honor for me to invite this forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, we need to share and learn from each other and continue to grow the practice of service learning globally. So thank you, Shun, for sharing. And I just want to say again what an honor it is to have each of our panelists here with us today. I want to thank you for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your experiences with us. It was truly informative and inspiring. We are grateful for your participation and your partnership. And I I really love the term that Noriana used, activation energy. I feel that from all of you. You exude activation energy. So thank you so much for being here, for being part of the panel. On behalf of the National Youth Leadership Council, our board, staff, Youth Advisory Council, we want to thank everyone for being part of the International Service Learning Forum today. For nearly 40 years, NYLC has been a pioneer for change in traditional education. We've been promoting service learning as a powerful tool to increase student engagement, teacher effectiveness, and overall academic achievement. And our vision is that one day, all young people everywhere will contribute to positive contributions to society as part of their education and graduate as civically responsible global citizens. It's in that passion, creativity, and innovation that young people, they're going to make this world a better place for all of us. We've seen it and heard it from young people throughout our day today. We know service learning empowers youth to transform themselves from this recipients of information and resources. You know, we give them resources, but they transform into these valuable contributing members of democracy. It develops those critical thinking and problem-solving skills that we've been talking about while they're tackling some of the most difficult challenges the world faces today. We've seen young people tackling education, equity, peace, sustainability, hydrocephalus. Now we all have heard and will do our research to be educated around this issue that so many people are inflicted with. You're all here today because you know we have to engage young people as solutions. You've come to improve your practice. You've come to network with others, to learn globally from leaders in service learning about their programs, what's happening in classrooms, and to share what you've accomplished. And hopefully you've been recharged and inspired to continue this important work. I do want to ask each of you, though, to take away something more, especially any young person who's joining us. We know education is the most important thing that you can do, that we can do for ourselves, and we have to be willing to fight for it. We are educating young people today. The way that we're doing it isn't working in all of our spaces. Service learning isn't happening in every classroom. It isn't developing the character outcomes that we need to have to make this world a better place. So when we serve others, we build bridges. We learn to communicate with those who are different from us. We've heard from our panelists today how the diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, social justice are part of a true quality service learning experience. We develop that empathy and we see beyond what's good for me to what's good for the whole. So I'm asking you, again, especially our young people, to stand up and become part of something larger. We each need to be that voice for service learning. We need to advocate for it within our schools, within our states, within our countries. I'm asking you to help us advance this practice by sharing best practices, your project ideas, what's most important around building this collective impact that we can share with others to convince others that service learning is a positive and impactful way of teaching and learning. Our story of service learning and its positive effects for young people, it's a great one, right? It needs to be recognized. So I'm asking you, please amplify your work. Share your stories through social media, newspapers, website, blogs, tag people in it so that we can all share and amplify the amazing work that's happening around the world. You can participate on the service learning listservs, come to our National Service Learning Conference, join NYLC's online learning community, share best practices, ask questions, and most of all, again, share that impact that service learning is happening in your classroom, in your life, in your after-school program, in your community. We want to be able to share this amazing teaching and learning tool with the world. I want to thank each and every one of you for everything you're doing to make the world a better place. I want to thank all of the amazing NYLC staff members for their hard work today, the presenters that we've had, the facilitators who made this event possible, and a huge thank you to the Allstate Foundation for their support of this event. It would not have been possible without them. We cannot wait to see each of you this spring as we leap into the service learning universe at the 34th Annual National Service Learning Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. And until we see you there, we hope you will join us as we serve, learn, and change the world. Thank you all for coming.